So, more than a few years ago now, I was serving as the assistant minister at a congregation up north here in California. This was a congregation that, in size of its membership, was somewhere between 550 and 600 people. And so you can imagine with 600 people as members and then all the visitors that came in and all the friends, what a busy congregation it was. 2 services on Sunday morning and all kinds of programming going on all the time. We were very, very busy. So one Sunday, between the 2 services, I was in the social hall, which was this absolutely beautiful social hall, gorgeous wood beams up above and windows that overlooked a beautiful view. And more importantly than the architecture was the hustle and bustle happening in the room, which happened every single week. There were tables and booths set up all over this social hall with different groups and committees from the congregation represented, and people would mill around between the services and after the services and talk to various people and find out about volunteer opportunities and programming that was happening and ways that they could become more deeply engaged with the congregation. So I'm there in the middle of this social hall one Sunday morning, standing by the welcome table with its big umbrella that was over the top so no one could miss it. And I was standing next to this lovely lay leader who I'd just gotten to know a little bit in passing. And we stood there quietly for just a moment. And then she said to me very softly, she said, "You know, several years ago, this was a dirt lot." And she said, one Sunday after the service, we came out here, a few of us, and we stood on this dirt lot, the sky over us, sun shining down, and we imagined this social hall. She said, we knew where we were as a congregation in our life, that we were on the verge of growing, that things were happening, that we were becoming something else. And she said, just a few of us stood here and started to imagine this. And here it is. And she still sounded surprised. And a little note on how that happened, because the idea of becoming what we are invited to become, I think, is a fascinating process, because sometimes we just accept the invitation and we don't know how we're going to get there. They didn't know how they were going to get from that dirt lot to this magnificent social hall, and I don't think you'll ever guess how it happened. So at the time, there was somebody in the congregation who, I think she was in her 70s, and she decided to apply for something that was happening a little bit more and more at that time, and it was called reality television. And it was a little show called Survivor that had not had a single season yet. And she went on and was kicked off the very first episode. But they gave her a chunk of money. And she took that money and she seeded this social hall at her church. So I can say that's probably about the last thing reality TV has done that's been good, right? But I love that story because they had the vision and they had no idea where that was going to come from. But as they moved into becoming who they were, the means, the way appeared through creativity and the generosity of the folks who were there. You know, as human beings, I think we have individually similar stories. I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure I'm not done. I'm not fully baked yet. I still have a ways to go. I think that may be true for all of us, that whether we are 9 months old or 99 years old, we are still becoming who we are. If you think back to who you were 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago or more, you may recognize that person, but you'll also notice differences between that person and who you are now. Sometimes I go back and read something I've written, whether it's a sermon or a social media post, will pop back up and I'll think, did I say that? And sometimes I'm embarrassed, and sometimes I'm amazed, like, wow, that's really wise. I wish I were thinking like that at the moment. That's the thing about life, is that we are not finished. We are always becoming. And we are becoming who we will be, even as we are who we are. In seminary speak, this is something that we call process theology. When I talk about theology with this congregation, what I mean is the way that we understand and make meaning of our existence. These theologies are systems to help us better understand how to understand our place in the wider universe, the reasons why we're here, what it's all about. And process theology says that life is always unfolding. The future is not determined. You are not set as you are. You are becoming. In this moment, we are becoming together. And who we were when we started this worship service won't be exactly who we will be when it's done. We are becoming. Process theology also talks, for those who find it useful to talk about God, the idea in process theology of God is not as an omnipotent being that is deciding what our lives are all about. It is a force, an energy that is moving with us through life, that is helping us to navigate life by making choices and accepting those invitations that life gives us with results that will help us to become the best that we can become as we understand it from the depths of our soul, not as anyone else tells us it has to be, but as we feel like we are called to become, both individually and collectively as a community. I think of it too as, it's like if you're standing in a river. If you imagine life is a river, and that water's going by, and that water's always different, but that water's always changing you as it's moving by you, and you're changing it as it flows through your hands that are down there in the water. That's the idea of process theology, that we're not assigned a life, we're invited into a process, and that the sacred is not above us, but it's in the everyday living, the choices that we get to make, the invitations to life that we get to hold. So I say all this in looking and thinking about Tapestry and where it is now and what it's becoming. And I think about last year when I was in talks to come here to Tapestry. And initially it was a talk about an interim minister. And then the more that the folks and I were talking at the time, there was concern about, well, interim work is about a very fixed period of time, and contract work would give us more flexibility. And the reason the congregation wanted a little more flexibility at that time was because, well, the world, the administration that we were in, we were fairly early into figuring out how to navigate that and hold the changes that we were seeing all around us. Congregation didn't know what it might be like without the minister, the wonderful minister who had been here for so long. You know, that person goes away and you think, well, who are we now without that person? And there were concerns about, would the renters that we had who were immigrant groups, would they be able to stay and make their rent? And how would all of this happen? It was a lot for leadership at that time to figure out. And so I came in with the idea that it would have some flexibility to it as it would be needed. And along the way, as we've been together, we've been exploring the ideas of who Tapestry is becoming. Not who somebody else has decided Tapestry should be, but at its heart, at the spiritual center that you all share. What are you becoming? What do you want to be? What invitation to life is Tapestry answering? You know, I had I love teachers. How many teachers or former teachers do we have in the room? You are inordinately overrepresented in UU congregations. Teachers just find their way here, I've decided. Maybe that's why I like Unitarian Universalism, and felt at home. But I had a wonderful teacher, Mrs. Meyer. She was an honors English teacher in high school. And she treated it very much like a college class. So she was very professional, and the work was hard, and so on. And we were a group of honors type misfits who were very much overachievers and so on, and very concerned about our grades and getting everything right. And that also probably is a demographic in a lot of UU congregations, right? So she rarely told personal stories. So each one that she told, I remember, and I now realize she told these stories for very particular reasons. And one morning she came to class and she said that she was tired because she and her husband had been up very late the night before talking. And she said they'd been talking because he had been given an opportunity at work for a promotion. And this promotion would double his salary, and it would increase his power and prestige in the company, and it would mean that they would be able to go on company-funded trips around the world occasionally, and there were a lot of perks to it. But she said the more they talked late into the night, the more they kept coming back to the fact that he was happy as he was. He was happy with the position that he had. He didn't want those extra responsibilities. He wanted the time that he had with his family. He thought their life was good. He liked where they lived. He knew they weren't wealthy, but he knew it was enough. Now, this blew my mind. I didn't know this was an option at the time. I don't think our entire little overachieving group there knew this was an option. I came from a family where my father was offered a promotion and we said yes. And if that meant we moved and left all of our friends and left family behind, then that is what we did. And we did it over and over. And here was somebody telling us, and I think it was very deliberate, that it was okay to really look deep within ourselves into the heart of who we are and honestly answer who it is that we want to become. And sometimes becoming just means deepening who you are at this moment in this place. It doesn't always have to be something expansive and beyond. Sometimes becoming just means finding a wholeness where we are at any given moment in time. Here at this congregation, since I've been here, I've been delighted and touched to see how people have stepped up when needed. I mean, we talk about, I feel like if you're new and we keep talking about this restroom upstairs, you think, what is going on with this? But I mean, it's got a mirrored ceiling and paisley wallpaper. I mean, come on. And it's up there where our kids are, so we needed to get that restroom made over, and it was quite an expensive endeavor, and we had a matching grant. And we had the money for that matching grant, and it seemed like a matter of hours, wasn't it? Or a couple days. I mean, it was very, very quick that money came in. We've had people in the congregation this year who've seen the need for various things. I mean, we have had our treasurers throughout the years. Wonderful folks have been reconciling our books monthly, doing payroll. I mean, this is a lot to ask of lay people, volunteers, as congregations get larger and more complicated. And so we had somebody step forward to anonymously fund having a professional bookkeeper for the rest of this year. What a lovely thing to have done. We have a couple of anonymous folks who are funding the 20 hours we now have for an office administrator this year. When we've needed something, people have responded, and that has been amazing. And as Linda said, and talk about people responding, Linda running our stewardship campaign and being relatively new to this congregation, that's taking on a lot, and she has been absolutely amazing with doing that. And her sweet, wonderful, generous spirit, I think, has infused that campaign. And we are 60% toward where we need to be at this point, which is also wonderful, since we have a slightly ambitious goal for this year. And we've been hearing this month about the 30 years. We're at the 30th anniversary. 30 years of people doing amazing things to make this congregation happen. That is something we should all be really, really proud of. The fact that this congregation is coming forward when needed. You all really do come through. And the difference, I think, between when I came on board last year and what I'm looking at now is when I came on board, I think Tapestry was wondering, do we have a future? In this crazy mixed up world, do we have a future? And I feel like now, the actual thing that Tapestry is wrestling with is, what is our next chapter? What does that look like? We absolutely have a future. Tapestry has a future. The question is, what does that next chapter look like? Yesterday, we had a newcomers orientation, something we do a few times a year. And it was wonderful. We had, I think, 16 or 17 folks in the sanctuary here, and we sat in a circle and had opportunities to share, and it was really lovely. We had seven people signed our membership book then, so we'll be welcoming those folks in next week. But I have to tell you, it was so interesting. I've been running newcomer groups for many years at different congregations, and these folks yesterday were so visionary. Now, usually at newcomer groups, and it's totally understandable, they want to know how things work and so on. They want to, their questions and their concerns are about the immediate now. But these people were really looking toward Tapestry's future. And they were saying, well, couldn't there be a veteran circle here that we could advertise in the community so people who were veterans could come and have a space to have their spirits restored? Or couldn't there be more circles for sharing for just anybody, so it was more intergenerational and gender mixed and so on? And people were asking about adding dance and theater and arts opportunities to the building. It was incredible. I mean, it was all coming at me, and I'm like, look, I don't make all these decisions, so. But keep these ideas and keep them coming and talk to people and come on board. And I think there were two things that those folks were responding to. One is that in this really uncertain world, people are grateful to find a community like this with these values. And so they feel that they want to contribute to it and help expand its reach. And I think the other thing is something that I remember Peter Morales, who was our UUA president a few years back, said, when people asked him what the difference was between congregations that were able to make the hurdle from one size to another, he said it was really simple. He said these congregations laughed. He said when he would go visit these congregations, when the services would begin, there was joy in the room. There was ready laughter. People were engaged with one another, connected and laughing and joyful. And that's that other thing that I think newcomers are picking up here at Tapestry, because as much as we've carried the weight of the world this year, you folks have come in with smiles on your faces most mornings. Smiles on your faces and ready laughter. We this morning when we were listening to the kids and that laughter that bubbles up, the joy of being connected, of being in a place that offers us something that is different from out in the world. This is something you folks get, and newcomers feel this absolutely. So for me, this is a congregation that is already doing the work to determine what comes next. We are in an interim season. I am here with you to help shepherd you through this moment so that the next moments of this congregational life can be determined and figured out. Sometimes that work is painful. We talk about wanting to grow or maybe be something, become. Maybe it's also okay to be what we are and just nurture that. But as we try to expand into the 5-year plan this congregation has and so on, sometimes it hurts. It's painful to change. Things that we don't think we care about, we find we care about when someone does them differently. Or things that we think we're tired of doing because we've been carrying the burden so long. Maybe it's hard to actually give those things up at the time that somebody else says, well, I'd like to help with that. Understandable. It's a stage of any congregational life, is figuring out how to hold on and let go and move forward and nurture what you have. And it's okay. It's okay to be in that place where we don't have all the answers yet. Becoming is about allowing ourselves to accept the invitations as they come, but we don't have to have the track be so rigid that we don't have room to be flexible along the journey. So I think about the 30 years that have come before. I think about the 30 years ahead. I think about all the things that we've been talking about this month of what this congregation might be and do going forward. And for me, what rises up in me is the joy of possibility. I think it's something that we can really embrace as an opportunity for us, especially as we live in this world where we're concerned about Iran and Israel, Palestine, all these things that are so concerning to us. And the message of becoming is the fact that not only is this congregation not done, not only is nobody in this room done, that we're all still becoming, but so is all of humanity. This moment in time is not it. It's a moment. It will continue to shift and change, and we are part of that shift and change. We are still becoming, and that knowledge that we are still becoming means that there is always hope. There is always possibility. I think right now, in some ways, we're on that dirt lot, imagining what could be. That's true in our personal lives. That's true in the lives of the life of this community. Question that we ask ourselves is, who are we being invited to be? What are we being invited to become? I think this is the deep work of our spirits, work that we can do with openness and purpose, knowing that we will be changed by the rivers that flow by, and that we, too, change those waters by becoming who we are.